Let's continue on the transition effects. In this instance, let's use a div box to demonstrate transition. Let's see how we can alter the shape or the dimensions of a div box using transition effects. Within our div box, let's have a span that says hover me. Okay, that's the content in there, hover me. Let's go over to our CSS to code or style our div box. Remember, the div has a class name of bx. Alright, so we can go over to CSS, give some basic styling to the div box. For instance, let's give a background color of salmon, then a width. Of course, you know, a div is a block level element, so it took up the entire width of the screen or the browser. We want to constrain the width now to something, say 75 pixels, and a height of 75 pixels as well. Yes, that's what we got. If we want the hover me to be directly within the middle of the center, we'll first set the display of the div to a display property of flex. Then we set justify content to center, align items to center. You know how it goes. Alright, the hover me is now the middle of the div box. But the swing away and the hover me are touching each other. That's the anchor tag and the div, they're touching, so we need to create a space between them, separating them using a margin property. So we set the margin top for the div to 20 pixels. That creates that necessary space we crave. Now over to the transition aspect of this snippet. We'll be using the hover pseudo class on this div box to create a transition effect. This is how it goes. This is a normal selector div.box. All we have to do is introduce the hover pseudo class such that when you hover over this div box, what happens? Let's increase the width from 75 pixels to 150 pixels and the height as well to 150 pixels. Let's see how that works out. That's when you hover over the box, you see the size increase, it expands in size. And based on the fact that you already set display property to flex, the hover me stays in the middle. Alright, but it's happening so fast. We can use the transition property now and set the duration to 0.5 seconds. We do that, you see, it is a bit smoother in alteration of its dimension. It expands smoothly, and when you move the cursor out, it returns to its original position, original size. Now that's a simple case or instance of how transition actually works. Okay, if however I don't want it to be a perfect square, like right here it is 75 pixels by 75 pixels, that's a square. On expansion, if you want it to be more of a rectangle, you could decide to make this 250 pixels such that when you hover now, it is now rectangular in shape with the width wider than the height in value or dimensions. You would definitely agree with me that the transition effect is easy to implement in your code, made possible using the hover pseudo class. Now you've introduced the transition and the hover pseudo class. Remember, while classes are preceded with a period or a dot, the hover or pseudo classes are preceded with a colon, which is two dots, one on top of the other. All right, you know how it goes. So take it away, practice and try it out on your own. You see, it's quite easy.